Hiring subcontractors can be a game-changing superpower for a design business. Personally, it's what allowed me to just about double the number of projects I take on, and it's allowed me to earn more while working less. And yet, I see a big gap between the number of freelancers who could be doing this versus the ones who actually are. And I think this is because if you've never done it before, it feels kind of intimidating and risky. Or if you're like me, you just don't understand how to go about it in a way that actually works for your business. And today, that's exactly what I want to break down, because if you approach subcontracting the right way, it will completely transform your operation and your revenue. So if you're curious about delegating certain aspects of your business, or you've tried it before and it didn't quite work and you want to reapproach it, this video is for you. Hi, my name's Anna, and I help people design better websites and run stronger freelance operations. I'm going to structure this video as a kind of Q&A addressing the most common questions and objections that I hear to why people don't feel comfortable subcontracting. And I'll also address just some concerns I know I had before I started delegating on my own projects. And I'm going to use subcontracting and delegating kind of interchangeably in this video. All I mean when I say this is paying someone else to help with certain aspects of your business without hiring any full-time employees. The first really common question or objection that I hear around subcontracting is, why would I delegate work if I can manage to do everything myself and take home the full project payment? Or similarly, I don't feel like I'm earning enough myself to justify paying someone else. So this is one of the elephants in the room around subcontracting, which is why I wanted to get it out of the way first. Of course, it is true that you have to pay anyone you're delegating to, but that does not mean that you cannot still earn very well on your projects, or even better than you would if you were doing everything yourself. So let me explain. Delegating right now is what allows me to take on maybe twice as many projects as I would otherwise. Whereas previously I might spend, depending on the size of the project, maybe 2 weeks on design and strategy, and then another week or two building and launching a website. Now I could hand off after those first 2 weeks and be able to immediately jump into the next project or reinvest that time into marketing my business. And one thing I hear is, okay, this is assuming you have a really strong pipeline of work, and if I don't know where the next project is coming from, I might as well just focus on and build this one all myself. So I would encourage freelancers to think a little bit further out from this. Let's say, hypothetically, you delegated a part of the work on your next project to a junior designer, developer, animator, anything that takes up a good chunk of your time. And then let's say that you took the week or even just 3 days that you earned back and you invest that into doing a marketing sprint. So warm outreach or creating content for your business, networking on LinkedIn or in person. All you would need is for that little marketing sprint to result in one additional project for your business in order for your investment in that subcontractor to have been worth it. And I would also keep in mind that if you're finding and delegating to great people, this is adding value to your business, which means that you can and should raise your prices to reflect that value. So both of these are examples of why, despite the fact that in the very short term, in the moment when you are paying your subcontractor, although it can feel as though they are detracting from your business's revenue, in the big picture, longer term, it can overall be adding so much more than it is taking away. The next really common hesitation I hear is that subcontracting could cause me to lose some control over my operation and ultimately could lead to a lower quality of output. I think that a lot of us freelancers or solopreneurs gravitate to this type of a role because we like doing things our own way and we're pretty independent. So letting someone else step in and do things in your files can feel pretty uncomfortable at first. I 100% empathize with this. I think there's a few simple ways to combat this. The biggest one is to just have a system in place for making sure that the final work is good to go. And I don't mean some complex system that you spend weeks developing. It could just be a simple checklist for doing quality control. And of course, you can and should share this with the person you're delegating to so that they know exactly what's expected. And you will be there to make sure that your business's quality bar is being met. You can jump in and provide feedback as needed so that the work gets where it needs to be. And of course, you can take this into account when you are planning your project, especially if you're working with someone for the first time. But for me, I will say the reality of what I've experienced is closer to the opposite of this. And what I mean by that is I tend to hire people to support with the tasks that I either A, am the least strong in, B, that I just enjoy the least, or C, that I'm the slowest in. So by hiring people who specialize in those certain things, so for example, development or copywriting, animation, because that is their specialty, what's more likely is that they will knock it out of the park and add something to the project that I likely wouldn't have the bandwidth or deep subject matter expertise to deliver at the same level that they could. And of course, as you work with more subcontractors and as you develop a relationship with certain ones, in my experience, you worry less and less about quality issues as they understand what your expectations are and how you like to work. And if you find really great people to delegate to in the first place, you will really minimize the likelihood that you'll have quality issues. And so that is what I will talk about next. All right. How and where do you find great people to delegate to? How exactly do you begin going about this if you've never done it before? This is something I remember feeling so in the dark on when I was first starting out. And so I want to break down just the logistics of this a little bit. First, what I would recommend doing is identifying a project to try things out with. So maybe a project with a more generous timeline where you can have a fallback plan. Just something low pressure where you can see how someone else works and test things out before putting someone on a higher stakes project. Once you have a project identified, I would reach out to maybe 8 to 10 potential subcontractors. I know this might sound like a lot, but just hear me out. For me, I did pretty specific searches. For example, Webflow development specialist that works with this particular framework on several different platforms. This could be LinkedIn, Upwork, Fiverr, any of those will do. I would send messages to maybe 8 to 10 people who meet your criteria and set up informational calls. So in my experience, a couple of them might not message you back. One of them might be a no-show. So realistically, you'll end up meeting with maybe 5. And right off the bat, maybe 2 or so might not meet your standards in terms of communication or the answers to the questions that you ask them. So that will leave maybe 2 to 3 winners. And then you will probably go with the best trade-off between what their rate is and how good you feel about them and their portfolio. So some of this is just going to be going with your gut. So ideally, then you have found your golden egg. And a few important additional pieces of information here. One, I would follow up with whoever you don't end up working with. Let them know you would potentially like to collaborate in the future, and then try to stay in touch. I keep a little directory of different freelancers with notes on them so that if and when I need people down the line, I don't have to start a search from scratch. So this will also give you some peace of mind knowing that if something's not working out with someone on a project, you have other people you could reach out to. So then you, of course, have to actually collaborate with this person to make sure the work gets done successfully and smoothly. I would not recommend just quickly explaining what they need to do and chucking the work over the fence and hoping for the best. I would be very specific about timeline, deliverables, number of meetings, project communication expectations, etc. Ideally, you could have all of this in a shared document. And of course, once you have your regular people, this can get more lax, but especially in the beginning, I would err on the side of over communication. And hopefully all of this goes well. If you notice that something is off, don't panic. Try to troubleshoot misaligned expectations. And if that doesn't work, you always have your plan B to fall back on. But if you've done the work of vetting this person thoroughly, you probably will not need a plan B. So once the work gets finished, your client is happy. First of all, congratulations, you have saved time that you can reinvest into improving or growing your business, and you have added value to your project. One more thing, I would recommend doing a brief retro with the subcontractor. So just what went well, how could you work better together the next time? Would they like to work with you again? That's really important because you want to keep great people. It's not just a matter of finding them, it's managing them well and keeping them happy. There's the saying, there's no bad employees, there's only bad managers. I think maybe this is a little bit exaggerated, but I do believe in the idea that if something's not going well with someone you're delegating to, as the manager, your first question should be, is there some expectation that I should have or could have communicated that I did not? And how could I correct for that and be clearer? So speaking for myself, the answer to that question for me has usually been yes. It's a matter of communication and clear expectations. My final note is it takes time to understand how to work well with someone. And if things are bumpy in the beginning, I would advise you to give feedback and work on your collaboration a bit before just immediately moving on to the next person. Another question I've heard is, do I myself need to first become an expert in a certain skill before I start delegating it? So this is an interesting one, and I will say that this is probably the more common trajectory, but the answer is no. You do not have to first become an absolute expert before you subcontract something, but I would add a few caveats. So first of all, I think that you should know or learn enough to be able to give very specific instructions and feedback. So you should be able to put together an informed quality control checklist that we were talking about before. So if you are subcontracting for copywriting, for example, I still do think it is very worthwhile to invest time in learning what good website copywriting looks like. What are the basic best practices that you should be looking out for? What checklist should you use when you're looking over the work? I would say you also want to know enough about the topic. Another example, framer development, not to be taken advantage of. So if you're interviewing subcontractors and someone says this basic sales page will take a month and it will cost 10K, you want to know enough about framer development to assess whether they are being reasonable. And if they explain to you why the work is maybe more complex than you had accounted for, you want to be able to follow what they're saying. So what I'm describing is different than, and it's way less time consuming than becoming an absolute master of these crafts. It just means making sure that whatever route you decide to go, you arm yourself with enough information to be able to delegate responsibly and to maintain control over the quality of the work. Last, but maybe most important, is this question or concern around how can I trust that someone else is going to care about or be as invested in the final outcome as I am as a business owner. For most of us that have our own design businesses, it is like our baby. And I will be honest with you. One thing you do need to accept about bringing other people into your operation in order to grow it is that no one is going to care about your business quite as much as you do. That is a fact. I kind of think of it like having an actual child. no one is going to be as invested in your kids' well-being as you are as their parent. I don't have kids, but I'm pretty sure this is how it works. So just because you are so invested in your kid doesn't mean that at certain points it's not going to make total sense and be beneficial to leave your kid in someone else's care. So the solution isn't to just stay Velcroed to them forever, right? I mean, you could, but it would ultimately probably hinder their growth in the long term. This is unintentionally very psychologically deep, but I think you get my point. What can feel scary and counterintuitive in the short term can be so beneficial in the big picture. So something that you might give 110% on for your business, your subcontractor might give 80% on. But I think the important question is, taking this into account, can you still deliver your client with high quality, high value work overall? And in my experience, if you're finding great people, investing in your relationship with them, providing good feedback, the answer is yes. You can provide something just as good or even better than if you were doing everything yourself. And that's it. Delegating is a skill like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get. And if you're thinking right now, wow, Anna, all of this sounds like a lot of work, I would say in the beginning, that might be true. It is an investment for sure. But if you want to grow your business and raise the ceiling on what you can earn, delegating is one of the best ways that you can unlock that. So start small, trust the process, and remember, it probably won't go perfectly on your first try. If this was helpful, definitely stay tuned because I'll be talking about this topic more. Thank you so much. Bye.